So you've had your new vehicle for 5 or 6 months. It's bound to happen. You come out and you take a look and you got a rock chip. Well, let's talk about what you need to do to fix it. So there you go. It's right there. It's on the plastic trim out in front of the hood. Let's talk about why it's important to go ahead and fix a small spot like that. Most people would say, oh, you really can't notice it. It's not that big a deal. It's not that important. It's not, it's no big deal. It's a small, tiny little spot. Most people won't notice it. But let me explain to you what's going on here. Your paint is like a protective coat for the metal to prevent it from rusting, and it covers the plastic just so that it color matches and blends and matches. What's going to happen is once that continuous shielding seal is broken, is now moisture can get in and it can get around the edges of the paint, and what can happen over a period of time is it can begin to cause that paint to release, and then that spot will become bigger and bigger and bigger until all the paint's gone in that particular area. So that is why it is important to try to take care of small places like that early before they become big places. Let's talk about your touch-up paint and what to do there. Alright, this is a tutorial on touching up paint, and it will apply to any make or model. So what you're going to need to do is you will need to go to your dealer, whoever your manufacturer is, and you will need to buy the factory touch-up paint. In my case, it's Toyota, and it says Toyota or Lexus. What you will need to do is you'll need to either take them the paint code, which should be on your data tag, or you can take them the VIN number of your vehicle. They'll take the last 8, they will punch it in, and it will tell them exactly what color paint to give you for touch-up. What they gave me was, it says Toyota Lexus lacquer touch-up paint, and it's code 070. So it also says on the instructions on the back, you need to make sure that you keep this at room temperature. So I would advise that you not keep it in your automobile, because your automobile goes extremely hot in the summer, and then you've got extreme colds in the winter. So it says best if kept at room temperature, which would mean you would probably need to keep it inside somewhere. So you can hear it inside. It has a little shaking ball, kind of like a spray can. This is not an aerosol product. This ball is strictly in there to help mix up the paint. So I'll apologize for any background noise that we got going on. It's not always easy to be quiet on the set when you're filming where I do. So it is what it is. But back to the show. Let's talk about the abrasive tip that comes on the very tip of the touch-up paint that comes with the Toyota. The tip, like I said, is an angle cut small abrasive. So if you have a spot that has gone into the metal and maybe it's started to begin to rust or whatever, you can take and carefully go around the edges of the rock chip and take off any rust that happens to be on the spot. So in my case, it's on the plastic, so that's not going to be necessary. Let's talk about the next thing. Is you remove the white cap, and underneath, if you're familiar with a paint pen, this has a little tip that you press, and you would take and press it facing down on a piece of paper or something that didn't matter, and you'll get the paint coming. Let's see if I can get some to come out. I'll get a little dab on my finger if I can get it to come out. There it is. It's beginning to come out. It's coming out a little bit at a time, and that's what you want. You don't want to get too carried away. You see, you got a little bit beginning to come out, and that works like a paint pen. Okay, so when you get through, you take your rag and you carefully wipe all that off so that it doesn't dry and make a mess. But the last and final thing that this touch-up paint has is inside a brush that gives you direct access to the paint for a larger area. I prefer to use the brush, and when we get to putting it on, I'll explain why. First, we need to do a little bit of prep. Alright, so what I like to do to prep the spot that I'm going to be touching up the paint on is I prefer to have 1,000 to 1,500 grit sandpaper, and at the moment I'm out. I don't have any on the shelf. So, but what I do have, and works almost as good, is I have the number 4 or 4/0 steel wool. Okay, you want to be very careful when you're doing this procedure. You want to be right on the area that's going to need the touch up. You don't get carried away outside of that area, because you will damage the finish. So I'm going to get set up, move you in close, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Alright, so as you can see, it's just a small rock peck right there. So what you're going to want to do is just take you a little bitty piece of this steel wool. You don't need a bunch of it. You just tear it off. You want to make it as small as you can. You just want to stay right on top of the rock chip. You're just trying to abrade it a little bit to give that paint something to bite into and hang on to. You don't want, like I said, you don't want to get carried away and go way outside the area. Stay right on top of the rock chip. Alright, one of the other things that I use and keep on hand pretty well all the time is I have, it's 99% isopropyl alcohol. Works pretty good as an oil and degreaser. Does a good job. I have also used brake clean. Some people will argue with me about that, but I've been using brake clean for quite a long time. That works pretty well also. It evaporates quickly, and that's what you want. Is you want to something that is going to evaporate really quickly. You go over the area and make sure that there's no oil and grease left in it, and you let it sit for a couple of minutes until everything's evaporated. Now, in the case of where this piece is located, it is right near the headlight, and there's a little ledge right underneath here, and I can take a piece of masking tape and I can stick under that ledge and stick it down. And you can see I can still see access and see my scratch, but this will keep anything from dripping down or accidentally getting on the light or going down and around the corner and getting paint where you don't want it. So now let's get out the touch-up paint, give it a good shake. Now again, we talked about that this is a lacquer product. The paint that is on your vehicle is either a 2 or 3 stage paint, and there's a lot of chemicals that go into producing this paint. There's no way to do that and have it in a touch-up container like this. That is why they have the lacquer. The other reason that they use lacquer is this stuff dries really quick and is easily, if you make a mistake, is easily removed. So we're going to go ahead and keep shaking it up, and then when we bring you back, we'll be touching up the little rock chip. Alright, I said earlier in the video I would explain why I like using the brush. The reason I like using the brush is because what you're trying to do with the paint is you're not actually painting necessarily with the brush. You're going to paint, you're going to dab. You're not going to, there's a little ball of paint that you can see. You're going to touch the product gently over the scratch, and you're going to be painting with that ball of paint. Now, just that fast, I touched it up. Now, we leave it alone and we let it dry. All right, we've given her a few minutes to dry. Still not going to touch it with my bare finger. It's a little cooler today than I like to do touch up with, but I really wanted to get this video out here for you and show you. And I didn't want to leave this chip untreated for any longer than I had to. Days with temperatures probably below 70, you might get by sometime in the 60s if you're out in the bright sunshine. But if the temperature's a little cooler than that, it may take a little longer to dry. So it's not recommended that you do it when the temperatures are, like I said, out of the 60s for sure. Alright, so as you can see, the scratch is gone to the naked eye. You can see it if you really are hunting for it, but it is not nearly as obvious as it was. But what I would like to say is there are some people in the detailing world who do paint corrections, as it's called, that can wet sand and can come behind and buff this area and make that spot to where it is not even detectable anymore. Those people have years and years of experience at doing proper paint correction on paint jobs. So I would not advise an amateur to try to jump in to figure that out on their 21 model automobile. Right there, that right there makes it go away and reseals the area and protects the paint. Alright, well I hope this helps you maintain and keep your brand new vehicle looking its very best for as long as possible. If you found that this information was beneficial to you, go down there and hit the subscribe button. That way you'll get a notification every time I put up a new video on how to maintain your automobile. And until I can film the next video on how to maintain your automobile, why don't you go watch one of these coming on the screen right now.